Hi everyone, I'm Susanna from HalalTrip, the largest travel and lifestyle platform for Muslims in Asia. We've worked with numerous partners in the travel industry ranging from NTOs like STB, HKTB to OTAs like Klook Traveloka to help them engage the Muslim market. So this year, 2020, is probably one of the hardest for the travel industry, COVID-19 putting all of our travel plans on hold. According to the SGIE report this year, Muslim spend on travel is expected to fall to 58 billion in 2020 and make a recovery to 2019 levels only in 2023. So while this outlook may seem a little bit gloomy, the good news is that the Muslim population is the fastest growing in the world at a rate of 70% as compared to the global average of 32%. So this presents destinations with a market that they simply can't ignore anymore. From our experience at HG Charity, businesses have been taking this time to engage the Muslim travelers to make sure that the destination is kept top of mind, and OTAs are readjusting to meet domestic demand. So, for example, we just wrapped up a campaign with Hong Kong Tourism Board where travelers were taught how to make tartan dishes like Hong Kong-style French toast or macaroni with ham, and they also learn Cantonese phrases so they'll be ready when it's time to go, when it's okay to travel to Hong Kong. We're also working on a campaign with STB to get Malaysian travelers excited about visiting Singapore while sharing about the safety measures so they know what to expect when they can visit Singapore in the future. Today, we're very happy and honored to have Fazal Bahardeen, who's the CEO of Crescent Rating and HalalTrip with us. Started in 2008, Crescent Rating has now grown to key markets across the Middle East, South Asia, Western Europe, and the rest of Asia. It is now the world's leading authority on halal travel, providing insights, research, consultancy, training, and rating services to every sector of the tourism industry, from government bodies to hotels. So without further delay, let's welcome Fazal, who will be sharing tips on how destinations can prepare for the Muslim travel market post-COVID.
Thank you, Susanna. Thanks for your time. Thanks for inviting me for the session. It's a pleasure to be on this on the Halal in Asia conference. So I'm going to sort of talk about at least share some thoughts about the Muslim travel market and our thoughts on what's going on right now and how destinations could start preparing for 2021. So let me, I think before I start talking about the Muslim travel market itself, I think just to put some context into where we are, we all know, but I think it's always good to remind ourselves, 2019, we were all sort of, very upbeat on the tourism industry. Our concerns were about, over tourism, overcrowding, and things like that. But then, 2020 came in, and then all of our concerns have now completely shifted to managing the pandemic, managing lockdowns, and of course, a full stop to travel across the world. The issue that we are facing now, on top of managing the current situation, is what will it look like as we move forward into 2021 and beyond. There are so much of unknowns there as we move on to the next stage of travel. How do we build visitor confidence? How do you restore trust in the industry? And there are so many unknowns out there, and that's why I think it's important to start looking ahead. Even if there are unknowns, I think there are certain things which sort of makes a lot of sense to start focusing on in terms of your future planning. And one of them, of course, is the Muslim travel market. Why Muslim travel market? I think that's what I will sort of share my thoughts on. And probably when I talk of Muslim travel market in the context of post-COVID, I get sort of three questions being asked. Will it still be a growth market? I think that's a question that a lot of people have in their mind. Is it a market which is still going to grow? What will be the key drivers of this market? We in our research, we talked about some of the key drivers, in our reports earlier this year and even last year. And I think the most important question that a lot of people have are still to unlock is, will the traveler's behavior change as we move into the next phase of travel? So I'll try to sort of talk through these few points. Will it still be a growth market? I think that's the key question. These are some of the numbers that we have shared during the last few years in terms of the growth of the Muslim market in the reports that we release with MasterCard every year. And our projection was in 2020 there will be 160 million Muslim travelers. However, this did not happen. Definitely did not happen. 2020, as we know, has been a disaster for the travel industry. Exactly how many Muslims travel, I think that's a very difficult answer to give right now. But we are going to talk about this, and also importantly, what will be the projection that we made for 2026, which is about 230 million travelers. Is this still true? Will it be 230 million, or will it be lower than that? I think that's the question that we'll answer in our next report, which will come in the first quarter of next year. Having said that, I think Muslim market is still a growth market. Whatever the growth trend will be in the new travel phase, Muslim market will be one of the key growth markets. Why? I think simply because one important thing, that Muslim population, it's a fact that Muslim population will grow to about 2.3 billion by 2030, which will be close to about 29% of the world's population. So that number is very key. So Muslim population is continuing to grow. And number two, I think most importantly, it's a young population. If you see the demographics of the Muslim population, the median age is only 27, and 60% of the Muslim population by 2030 will be below 35 years. So this alone is a good indication that Muslim travel market is still a growth market and an important growth market. The second question that I raised in earlier was, what will be the key drivers? And these are some of the key drivers that we identified in the Global Muslim Travel Index last year, and we identified that we are now moving into Halal Travel 2.0, and some of the key drivers will be technology, social activism, demographics, and environment. Actually, now we think that these four things, which are not exclusive, mutually exclusive, they are interconnected, interrelated. They are going to be much more important in the next phase of travel. So I think technology, as we know, is going to play a key role within the travel industry. Social activism, we see that happening as well. And demographics is going to have a huge impact, simply because Muslim demographics is one of the youngest populations around the world. So that's the second area I wanted to talk about. These drivers will continue to exist and continue to be the key drivers for the halal travel industry. And then going on to the most important question, which is, will the behavior of Muslim travelers change? I think that's a question a lot of us don't have a clear answer. We have some understanding of certain behaviors. For sure, certain behaviors will not change when it comes to, especially when it comes to halal consciousness and faith-based needs and requirements. But of course, there are certain elements, how they go about consuming those things will definitely change. So within this context, as I said, it's a difficult area currently to sort of really pinpoint and say, okay, this is how the behavior will change. What we did was we wanted to help the industry develop models and scenarios and tools so that they can start, building scenarios, using tools, using frameworks to sort of build a picture of how things will change and how that could help them to plan better their future. So that's what we did with our report that we released in July this year, which is called the Travel Readiness Report. And we used although these models are relevant for any part of the world, but we used ASEAN's numbers to show how you can use the frameworks and scenarios to build different scenarios or growth models so that you can plan better for the future. Since the time is limited, I'm not going to go through all some of the frameworks and scenarios and models that we explained in the report. I'm just going to talk a little bit about two aspects of it. But before that, just to let you know that this is the 18th report that we have been doing with Mastercard during the last 5 to 6 years. So all other reports are available on our website. Please go down and you can download them free of charge. So coming back to the report, travel readiness report. So what we did was we built a framework called Travel Readiness Framework, where we looked at what are the key drivers which will be relevant within the COVID post-COVID phase. Then we looked at some of the phases, recovery phases. These drivers and phases are, it's critical to understand them because that will define what will be the recovery paths, which is called the paths here in going forward. And then we looked at injectors, which are recommendations. I'm going to briefly touch two things, the paths and injectors here. So I think it's important to know where our future lies, So what we did was we simulated using the ASEAN numbers, 3 growth scenarios or 3 recovery scenarios. One was called the positive scenario, where the industry will recover to about 94% by 2021. One was the plausible scenario, the industry will recover to about 71% by 2019. And the pessimistic scenario, that industry will only recover to about 31% by by the middle of 2022. Sorry, I meant that recover to the 94% of the 2019 levels, which is the positive scenario, only by middle of 2021. And the pessimistic scenario is that we will only recover to a 31% of the 2019 levels by the end of 2022. Where we are today, this was our projections in July. We see that the positive scenario is definitely not going to happen. The plausible scenario is still a reality, given that we are looking at vaccines and all that. Having said that, it could be somewhere between the pessimistic and plausible scenario. That's also a path that could be possible. I think it's important, really important for destinations and businesses to understand different scenarios so that you can plan better, because otherwise it is difficult to plan. We are in what we call a very volatile future, at least for the next 12 to 18 months. So we need to be able to, in order to navigate through this future, we need to have good scenario planning. So that's what our models were showing in terms of scenarios. And then what we did in the report was looked at some issues that we will face as we go into the next phase of travel. So we looked at through the same things that we look at in our Global Muslim Travel Index, what are the constraints and strains when it comes to access to a destination, when it comes to communication, environment, and services. So this is not a cure-all solution, but this is to show how you could build your planning to help you better plan, understand the traveler constraints, understand the destination constraints, and see what you can do to alleviate these pains for travelers, and also from a destination side. So both from a supply and a demand side. So this is, we don't have the time to go into each one of them. The report sort of talks about them. I'm just going to take an example. For instance, in terms of empathetic marketing. So what we did in HalalTrip, which is our consumer platform, we wanted to build our content, at least for the next phase of travel, around empathy. So we looked at 5 areas, which we called it 5 Fs, because people were missing, traveling with family, missing traveling with friends. People were all, all locked up in their own places. So there was, the need to have freedom, and similarly fearless and fulfillment. So we looked at, a way of, getting the content across to the consumers through these 5 Fs. So that's just an example. So that's, I think, so coming back, so we looked at the growth paths, and then also the injectors, what we call. So I think it's important that destinations and businesses, use some of these tools to sort of understand and build some scenarios for the future, because as I said, we don't have all the answers of what the future is going to be like. We have some answers, but we don't have all the answers. So based on that, I think it's important that we use models and scenarios to build how we want to navigate the future of especially Muslim travel. just the last few charts, I want to sort of talk about, what's going on in the next phase of travel from a profile or traveler profile point of view. One is, of course, luxury and private. Luxury travel is probably one of the first things to take up. And we are talking to many destinations who are seeing a continuous. Actually, they sometimes have not seen a real dip even in luxury travel. So that's one area. The second area is the essential business travel. Although mass business travel will take a long time, but we see that essential business travel will start to happen, especially when the air travel bubbles start forming across the world. When it comes to specific Muslim traveler profiles, I think there are three main profiles which are on two sides. So they are probably the most impacted as well, because they are a younger population, as I said, Muslim millennial travelers, Muslim female. Females are probably in the workforce of some of the most hit during the COVID. And then Gen Z, their graduations have been disrupted. Their graduation trips have been disrupted. Having said that, they are also probably will be the first ones to travel, because they will be more eager, eager to take risk than older population. So we have released reports on them during the last 3 years in terms of their behavior patterns. So once again, not all of them will be applicable post-COVID, but most of the behavior patterns that we had researched and published in this report will be still applicable for these markets. So these markets, the Muslim millennial travelers, women travelers, Gen Z travelers, is definitely some profiles to look at as we move forward with the Muslim market in the next in 2021, at least the latter part of 2021. From ASEAN point of view, I think ASEAN is really a very Muslim-friendly region. Almost 43% of the intra-ASEAN travelers are Muslim travelers. So I think ASEAN has a unique opportunity to tap into the Muslim travel market, especially when it comes to domestic and intra-ASEAN markets. So I think overall, Muslim travel is definitely going to play a key role in post-COVID travel. When I say key role, it is within the context of the growth patterns that we are going to see. Of course, Muslim travelers will still fall into the same growth pattern, but they will still be a key component of travel as it was pre-COVID. So that's, I think, what I wanted to share with you. So thank you very much, and I'll give Susanna. Susanna, I think, is going to share with me some questions that probably I can expand on some of the stuff that I just talked about.
Thank you, Fazal, for sharing. I think the models and scenarios that you pointed out will be very helpful for businesses in the travel industry to consider, especially now when things are so uncertain and there's nothing for us to look back on and apply moving forward. So I think there's something that you mentioned that I thought was very interesting about how the luxury travel market is something that brands can look into. Would you be able to share more about it? Do you see more Muslim travelers in this luxury travel market in certain regions, or do you have any advice for brands who want to tap on this luxury travel market?
Yeah, so I think I have had a couple of discussions with some travel stakeholders, and one of those stakeholders actually mentioned that the luxury travel market. So they have a boutique kind of accommodation across some parts of the world, and they were telling me that actually that market never dipped. And number two, that even the rates didn't go down. The rates stayed at the same level. I mean, you're talking these properties, you're talking like $1,000 a night kind of properties, right? And they told me that didn't take any hit at all in terms of their rates. So I think there is this and when you talk about luxury market, they're also talking about privacy. So you're not talking about hotels and things like that. Of course, you're talking about more, I would say more resorts and private resorts, and, accommodate some bigger families. I think this market seems to be, and this is what I get from the industry itself and people who are running this these kind of properties, and this market seems to be continuing to move forward. And this market, I think, if I mean, of course, still you're talking about having air connectivity. I mean, that's an issue. But if people can travel to a destination, I think luxury market is definitely a market to tap into and look into first.
It must be nice to still be able to travel during this time when everyone's so travel deprived. Actually, just wondering, do you know if there for this luxury travel market, from what people have, like your clients have been sharing with you, are they mostly from the Middle Eastern sector that has been growing?
Yes. So this particular client is a Middle Eastern service provider, where land travel between countries, or at least within the countries, is allowed. So, but having said that, also, Susanna, I mean, I'm talking to some of my friends in South Africa. And they were telling me it's so tough to get to book a hotel in the beachfront for the next 2 months or 1 month. Yes. So I think there are pockets of travel happening because of we are so locked in our houses and places. So I think it's happening. It's just that. We need to understand what are the key enablers to this kind of travel that's happening.
Thank you for sharing. I have another question for you. I understand that for Crescent Rating, one of your core business is training, consultancy, and rating. Would you be able to share more about what the various businesses have been doing during this period when travel is on hold?
Actually, that's a good question, Susanna. So I think one of the things that's going on with the number of clients that we are working across the world. And I think most of them are taking the opportunity to build a capacity and capability building, and in a number of places actually. I mean, we have done a kind of a training session in Kenya for all, in Africa. We have done some training sessions in Uzbekistan. So training, I think, is a key thing that some of these destination NTOs are looking at, and I think also during this time it's also helped, gives them time to train their staff as well. So I think training was already happening before a lot, but I think during this period there's more focus on upskilling the hospitality staff. So we also, we have an online program which we also opened up free of charge during the height of the pandemic, sometime in May. So I think that's happening. In terms of rating also, interestingly, so we are getting a lot more requests for rating than what we used to have even before COVID.
So virtually?
Yes, so we do. So we have all, our audits we have done. Now we have developed, our skills to do virtual audits through using Zoom and things like that, with a local partner as well. Yes, so I think in terms of, upskilling staff, capability building, making sure your facilities are and services are, up to the mark when travel opens. I think many tourism boards are doing that actually.
That's really good, so that they're all ready once the travel bubbles are open and all that. And also, I think what this pandemic has taught us is that it's important to be ready for the virtual world also.
Absolutely.
I have one last question for you. Do you see any differences in how your clients across different regions have been preparing this period? Like, for example, any clients in Asia versus your clients in the Middle East? Because I know because of COVID, everyone's affected differently.
Yeah, so I think, generally the Asian destinations are probably more active in preparing themselves for post-COVID when it comes to travel. Simply because I think, to be fair, Asian destinations have managed COVID better than in, for instance, European or US destinations. So I think Asian markets are much more. I mean, all across Asia, I think they're looking at in terms of preparing themselves for the next phase. And also some markets that we are working in Africa, they're also looking at preparing for the next stage. I just mentioned you, Kenya. We work in South Africa as well. We work in Uzbekistan. They're also really keen. Not so much in Europe, by the way, although we have worked here and there. But I think because they are the primary
Fighting
focus is
another war.
fighting primary focus is fighting COVID, and it's coming back big time with the winter setting in. But I think maybe the first quarter of next year they'll have to start looking at different markets. I actually did a session for WTM just a couple of weeks ago. WTM happened a couple of weeks ago. I think there is this of course, the huge issue that they're facing now in France, in UK, in Germany. I mean that has to die down before they can really start looking at travel. Yeah,
that's true. Even domestic travel has to be on hold in their countries.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. I think we really learned a lot from your sharing a session earlier on. So thank you so much, Mr. Fazal. And to everyone out there who have been destinations, NTOs, and stakeholders in the travel industry, if you are thinking about how you can start preparing for post-COVID travel in the Muslim market, hope this sharing session has been helpful for you. And I think one thing that Fazal has mentioned is that content marketing is one of the key ways that brands can address the needs of Muslim travelers. And definitely we agree that you don't have to wait for travel to be back to normal before you start preparing. And we've seen this in the effectiveness of our campaigns. And we definitely encourage more brands to focus on this, especially with platforms that are trusted by the Muslim community. So that's all we have today. Hope you found this helpful, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Sana.
Thank you, Fazal.